You know, this conversation is going on now about a dress, men wearing dresses, especially black men wearing a dress. That's going on heavily since the 80s. It really started to be pushed then. As you're getting closer to the 90s, one of the people who they used was Larry Johnson to really push that, the NBA player, NBA legend Larry Johnson. But Larry Johnson was seen in a particular way. He had a gold tooth. He was exhibiting masculinity, a brown-skinned brother who was in shape, and he played for UNLV, which beat Duke. Duke was America's team. Majority of the players white, much to do, astute, Ivy League type school. And his team beat Duke for the national championship. That's not really favorable, for the king of the throne to look like Larry Johnson. So Converse worked, and of course Larry Johnson agreed to it, but Converse worked to change that image that Larry Johnson once had. And then they came up with the character Grandmama. And people accepted it. Usually through comedic relief, people will accept things that normally they're not comfortable with. They'll accept it through comedic relief, right? Gradualism as well. But that changed the identity of this particular man, this particular national champion. And we've seen it many times since. Some people say, well, you know what? It's comedy, right? It's comedy. Grandmama, that character was not a comedic character. That's actually the selling of shoes. But you'd have to ask yourself, what is going to get men young men between the ages of 18 to 35 to buy sneakers? Is it going to be your grandmother? Typically, your grandmother doesn't even like the same shoes that you would like, right? So that's if your grandmother's of age, right? But nevertheless, between the ages of 18 to 35 or 18 to 24, when you can buy sneakers for yourself, a grandmother is not really a strong selling point, right? That's not who it is. It's more so going to be the basketball player as I see him, right? As I see this particular professional athlete, that's who, by them being the example and them being the athletic figure, that's what will influence me to go and spend however amount of money on these sneakers, not a grandmother. So what was the agenda behind taking this man who looked a particular way, and this man who, like I said, had taken down America's darling team, being Duke University? This particular man, what was really the selling point to get him to market this idea of this man now being this woman and this character? There was a change. You had actors prior to this point like Sidney Poitier. Sidney Poitier is not reflected in the male actors of today. Sidney Poitier, when he was acting, he typically had on a role where he was the dominant presence on screen. If he was in a scene with another white man, he was not subservient to that white man. That white man was not astute. That character was not astute, and Sidney Poitier was a clown or foolish in nature. But you had a change in the 80s where you started to see less and less characters like Sidney Poitier's characters that he would portray, and more characters where if it was a black actor and a white actor and they were co-stars in this particular production, where the white character was more so prominent, he was brave, he was courageous, he accomplished, and the black character was a felon or a clown, a bozo, right? A bozo. Sidney Poitier slapped a white man on TV in a movie, So you didn't see that anymore. But then you started to see black men in motion pictures and films, and they started getting slapped by their own black women. Think about Soul Food, for example. That man was chased around his home by his wife, who was going to stab him with a knife. I mean, that's domestic violence like all the way. You know what I mean? So the imagery says a lot. So are there dollars behind showing yourself in imagery? Are there dollars behind showing you in a wholesome and an upstanding image? Or are there segments that you really just have to fit in? You have to fit in those segments. And in those segments is where you can actually blossom. You can't really grow if you want to be in a dignified position. If you want to look like Medea or Grandmama, check. You want to look like Big Mama, check. You want to be a drug dealer, check. You want to be in prison, check. You want to be running from police, check. Do you want to be a hard-working man who loves his wife and has his children, and your children aren't subject to the system, and your wife didn't turn your kids over to the system, or the mother of your children didn't do that, and you and your family's actually united, and you defend your household, and you stand for the structure in your household? Is that image being portrayed? Now the question remains, that image is not being portrayed, but are you looking for that image to be portrayed? Do you identify with that image? Do you want your children to grow up seeing that type of imagery? Or do you want your children growing up saying, there's some hoes in this house by two established, talented women, and those two women, you're going to say, revolutionized women's empowerment and women's lib in a song where two talented artists are saying throughout the entire song, there's some hoes in this house. So you got to think about what's being done behind closed doors and what are you voluntarily doing? What are you a part of? What are you willingly looking to say, no, I don't want that. I don't want to see that. I don't want to hear a good story about myself. Give me the worst. That's what I want. That's what I identify with, the worst. I don't deserve better. I deserve the worst. And that's what I've been seeing, man. And it doesn't look good. Casting Crowns Inc.